the best pull in history versus the best pull of today. The long-awaited banner of Neuvillette and Kazuha are finally here. Now if you're on the fence of for which one of these guys you should be pulling, this video will be perfect for you. We're going to try and make sure by the end you know exactly who will be better for your account. Now the way we're going to do this is start with just a pros and cons for both Neuvillette and Kazuha, then we'll run through some team synergies with other characters. We're also going to talk about how future-proof each of them are, and then finally, if you just want a straight answer, I made a questionnaire that I'll run through that can help you decide. All the parts are timestamped, so skip ahead if you want, and let's get started.
The tides beckon.
Kazuha is going to be up first, and this is not going to be a short list of pros. To start off, we have his insane grouping. Venti's might be better when it actually works, but normally he doesn't. And Kazuha is going to be much more consistent. Kazuha also has almost universal insane buffs, both from his A4 passive and his usage of the artifact set VV. Now this isn't always going to apply, but Kazuha's off-field elemental app with his burst can actually be quite useful. He's a super easy character to build. All you need to do is slap some EM main stats and just make sure he has the 4-piece VV. He has really good free-to-play weapon options, especially with Fav's sword. If you don't have Fav, then there's also Iron Sting and Sack's sword, which aren't bad either. And considering he came in patch 1.6, he still hasn't been contested much in his role, so I'd say he's pretty future-proof, but we'll go into that more later in the video. Now a long list of pros for Kazuha, but he isn't perfect. He doesn't buff Dendro, Geo, or Anemo damage. VV doesn't work with these elements either. To maximize the most out of Kazuha, you are going to probably need to learn some complex rotations to get double swirls. And then in a surprising amount of teams, Sucrose can actually come really close to Kazuha for a free-to-play alternative, so you won't always need to have him. Now for Neuvillette, he is probably our best on-field DPS in the game as of right now. Maybe not the highest single target ceiling, but his AoE potential clears everyone. He is a Hydro unit with good application, so he works in teams where he isn't even the main damage dealer like Hyper Bloom. His kit is obviously self-sustaining, he has really good self-heal, so he doesn't actually need a healer in his teams at all. Neuvillette is not reliant on any particular supports. While he does work really well with Kazuha and Furina, he doesn't really need them to perform well. And then he has pretty good flexible rotation since he doesn't need to stay on field, so you can actually cheese out energy requirements for both him and his teammates in a lot of teams. And finally, he has really good free-to-play weapon options with Prototype Amber, and then his artifact domain of Marechaussee and Golden Troop is really efficient to farm. Now just like Kazuha, Neuvillette isn't perfect either. He is somewhat reliant on shielding at C0, although you can sometimes get around it by just kiting around, but then you're going to get screwed over by some really aggressive enemies. For his highest performing hypercarry teams, they are mostly full 5-star teams, so they are not free to play friendly in that regard. And this isn't me at all, but I do know there's a part of the community that finds his charge attack gameplay kind of boring.
Clouds high, the birds call!
Have a little taste.
So what are their best teams and will you be able to play them? Well, since Kazuha is a support, he's pretty much good in every team. Like I said before, he does not buff Geo, Dendro, and Anemo damage, but all other elemental damage dealers are pretty fair game. If you are willing to learn double swirl setups, he's especially good in teams where there are two different elements doing big damage, like International with Child and Xiangling. With Anemo specifically, if you are playing with Farazan and Bennett, Kazuha himself can actually output pretty good damage for you, but you will have to change his artifacts and his weapon build. For Dendro teams, while Kazuha can't buff the Dendro damage, since he is normally a full EM build, there are actually some teams where he can be the trigger for something like Burgeon, and then he'll also be adding his own grouping and personal damage. Aggravate teams are also mainly electro damage focused, so Kazuha is going to be a great option there. Geo unfortunately does not synergize at all with Kazuha, but I guess you can still use him as a grouper if you really want. Now for Neuvillette, he's actually surprisingly versatile for being a DPS unit, and that's mainly because he's Hydro. I've decided to split his teams into 3 main archetypes, but he's definitely not limited to these ones. Firstly, we have his hypercarry setups. In my personal experience, these are the best and most comfortable teams. The most premium option is just going to be Furina, Kazuha, and Zhongli. so it is a full 5-star comp, but all of these guys are super universal, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of players have them. As we go down, the teams definitely get weaker, but they aren't bad at all. When Kazuha starts getting replaced, you'll definitely start feeling Neuvillette own damage fall off. Now if you do end up going for Neuvillette, honestly I would recommend sending everything you have left for Kazuha as well and trying to get him early or win 50-50. Neuvillette really does appreciate Kazuha's buffs, so if you want to maximize him, Kazuha is going to be a great pull as well. Now you can probably tell that some of the teams near the bottom also shift into a bit of a Taser setup. I thought of having Taser as another archetype, but a lot of Neuvillette's standard hypercarry setups already utilize Electrocharge anyway. For our second, we just have Hyper Bloom. Hyper Bloom is a broken reaction, and Neuvillette is a great hydro driver for these teams. Since Hyper Bloom is mainly single target focused, Neuvillette's huge AoE does actually help in practice. And these teams will see Neuvillette doing a lot less damage than usual because he doesn't have teammates buffing him, but then he can take the backseat here and just let Hyper Bloom do the lifting. Finally, we have his vape teams. These honestly are a bit of a hit or miss. Some of them require super complex rotations and hyper invested supports, especially with someone like Xiangling who needs an absurd amount of ER in these teams. If you are into speed running or you like seeing really big numbers, Neuvillette vape teams are probably going to be your best option.
Be sanctified.
How future-proof characters are is always a rough topic. Hoyoverse can literally decide to just release a character that completely invalidates everything about Kazuha and Neuvillette, and they wouldn't even have to give a good reason. But based on what they have been doing, we can get a pretty good read on how safe these two are. Kazuha has been out since 1.6, that's almost 2 years ago. He was then and still is one of the best supports in the game, and even in Fontaine, 4 out of 5 characters they've released really like him on the team. While supports like Furina and Nahida come pretty close to him in terms of power level, the fact that they haven't released a single grouper since him says a lot. Not to mention, while his A4 elemental damage bonus is really good, Kazuha being able to use VV is honestly a big portion of his value. So to power creep Kazuha, this future buffer slash grouper would need to be Anemo to even come close. And then even if this does happen, Spiral Abyss needs 2 teams anyway, so you can just run one on either side. So I think we can safely assume Kazuha is pretty safe. Now Neuvillette is the best DPS in the game, without a doubt. Hoyoverse does love to pump out DPS units, but even then I think he's in a pretty safe spot. Not only would a new DPS unit have to output the same damage as him, they'll also have to match him in AoE, which is really asking for a lot. He's also Hydro, which means he can abuse the fact that he can play on teams that use reactions like Hyper Bloom. And I would honestly say Neuvillette can get even stronger since we don't have any external HP buffers in characters or artifacts, and we don't have a Hydro variant of Goro, Faris, and Sari yet. Now just because of the sheer amount of DPS characters Hoyoverse releases, I don't think Neuvillette is as future-proof as Kazuha, but he's also pretty safe.
As one with wind and cloud.
And finally, we've made it to the last part of the video. Basically, I have a few questions that you can ask yourself about your account and what you want, just to make a final decision between the two. Now just a reminder, this is only if you're on the fence. If you are leaning towards one of them, seriously just go for it. They're both insanely strong and you're definitely not going to regret it. The first question you're going to need to ask yourself is, are you happy with your current TBS units? And do they synergize well with Kazuha? This can also extend to if you're interested in future units like Arlecchino or Clorind. Obviously you can't know if they'll like Kazuha, but as long as they aren't Dendro, Anemo, or Geo, it's very likely they will want Kazuha on their team. Now if your answer is yes, then Kazuha is probably for you. He's going to enhance your existing teams and make them a lot stronger, and since you're happy with them already, you won't need another DPS like Neuvillette. Now following up from this question, are you a player who gets bored of DPS units very easily? A lot of people, including myself at times, will play a DPS unit for a few weeks and then be ready to move on to a new upcoming character. If that sounds like you, again, Kazuha is going to be great. As amazing as Neuvillette is, he is just another DPS unit, so there is a good chance you're going to get bored with him. Kazuha, however, is going to enhance your experience with pretty much all DPS units, so he's going to be great. Next, do you have less than 2 limited 5-star Hydro units? Now this is specifically limited 5 stars, so we're not including Mona here. And since Hydro is such a crucial element in a lot of teams, and we still only have Xingqiu as our only good 4-star option, if you don't have 2 or more 5-star Hydros and you don't have your eye on others like Yelan / Furina, then Neuvillette is going to be great for you. By any chance, do you also want a brain dead easy way to clear the Abyss? Now both of these guys are strong enough to carry you through the Abyss, but I'm pretty sure everyone can agree on how brain dead easy Neuvillette is to play. He's basically unkillable since you're building so much HP and he has self-healing, and then all you have to do is just line everything up with his charge attack and it just all dies. So if your answer is yes to this, another point to Neuvillette. Finally, are you happy with your current existing Anemo units that you have on your account? Mainly talking about Sucrose, and if you have them, Venti and Jean. If you don't really like any of these characters, then Kazuha is probably for you. Just like Hydra, Anemo is also a super important element in teams simply because of the VV set, and if you're going to want to maximize a lot of teams, you're going to need an Anemo unit. So Kazuha will solve that issue for you there. And that's pretty much it. With those questions, I hope it'll lead you one way or another. An easy way to think about it is just see which answer between Neuvillette and Kazuha popped up more. Each of these questions do have different weights for different players, so definitely try and figure out which ones apply to you more. Now if something in this video did help you, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. Best of luck to those who will be pulling, and thanks for watching.